The Analogue 3D is here. This is the recreation in FPGA of the legendary Nintendo 64, and the system many of us have been waiting for. Analogue's marketing around the 3D has been somewhat curious. With absolutely no gameplay shown to date, this really made people question the product. But let me alleviate any concerns right now. The Analogue 3D is excellent, and if you've pre-ordered one, you're in for a treat. And you're going to see a lot of gameplay capture in this video. Now, while it is a good system, the Analogue 3D is not perfect, and there are a few notable issues that we need to talk about. Some of them aren't great, and some of them may be considered a deal breaker for some. And as always, I'm not here to sugarcoat it. We're going to discuss everything that I like and my dislikes with the Analogue 3D. Now, full disclaimer, I am a paid customer. I pre-ordered an Analogue 3D unit at the end of 2024 and have been patiently waiting like everyone else. However, Analogue did reach out and send me a review unit, which you're seeing in this episode. But as always, my thoughts and opinions are my own. According to the website, the Analogue 3D is a reimagining of the N64 in 4K resolution, 10x the resolution of the original N64. So let's clear up what this means. For anyone thinking that this is an internal resolution upscale that you would find on modern emulators, I'm sorry to tell you that it's not. Every game that you run on the Analogue 3D runs at its native internal resolution, which is typically 320 by 240, and can go all the way up to 640 by 480 in high-res modes. 4K in this instance means the source image is scaled up to 10x on a 4K device. This means that blurry N64 low-res games won't really look any better at 4K. However, the Analogue 3D comes with a range of filters and settings coupled with a very clean HDMI out. This is the very best image quality that I've seen outside of a RetroTink 4K upscaler. The unit itself is a sleek form factor based from the original N64 design with its curved surfaces. The cartridge port accepts any region N64 cartridge, and the unit contains standard buttons for both power and reset, as well as the standard 4 N64 controller ports on the front face of the unit, which allows you to plug in any N64 controller. The Analogue 3D also supports and recommends the 8-bit DOE N64 controller, which recreates the original N64 controller with a modern form factor. This wireless device features superior Hall effect joysticks with the original style N64 gate. The problem is, a lot of people have been raving about this device, but I personally don't like it. The analog stick feels completely off to me. In many racing games, I just found myself oversteering and slamming into walls way too often. Other games such as Perfect Dark and GoldenEye, where precision movement is an absolute requirement, the analog stick falls short, and as such, I simply can't recommend this if you're used to playing on a original N64 controller. If you're a casual player, then yes, the 8-bit DOE controller will get the job done, and its wireless capabilities is very welcome. But for me, nothing can replace the original N64 controller. On the back of the device is an SD card slot, standard for analog products. This enables firmware updates. There's also a USB-C power connector, a standard USB connector, and the HDMI out. Up to 4K at 60 frames per second is supported with HDR. The Analogue 3D comes built in with expansion pack support for the games that take advantage of the additional 4 MB of RAM, which can be toggled on and off. This is a nice touch for sure, and there's also built-in controller and Rumble PAK support. Rumble support in this instance means that any modern stick with rumble motors like the aforementioned 8-bit DOE controller will work with it. However, with an original N64 controller, you will still need to plug in a standard Rumble PAK as usual. And that's not all. Standard N64 peripherals like controller packs, Rumble PAKs, and even third-party ones will work. My third-party memory pack pros work all fine. However, I was not able to test a transfer pack as I don't possess one, but it's fair to say that many, if not all N64 peripherals will run just fine. When you first turn on the device, there is a fairly basic user interface, very typical for an analog product. Plugging in a cartridge will automatically add it to the games list, and as you add more original cartridges, they will be added to this games list that you can cycle through. Now this is a little curious, as originally I thought that the games themselves were being dumped to the SD card so that they could be played without the original cartridge, but as it turns out, you must have the cartridge connected to launch into any game. Trying to select a game that doesn't have the cartridge inserted simply won't work. Now the reason for this is because Analogue has provided per game configurations that can help improve the quality and performance of individual games. And we will definitely talk about this shortly, but I do want to mention the Analogue 3D supports PAL, NTSC and Japanese region games all in one device. They are for the most part detected correctly and will show up in the games list and launch without issue. Analogue boasts 100% compatibility with original N64 games on their website. And I would say, with the 20 or so original cartridges that I've tested, which is a combination of North American NTSC, Japanese region NTSC, and European and Australian PAL cartridges, I have had no issues to date. One thing that you may come across is inserting an original cartridge may show up as unknown cartridge in your games list. In my experience, cleaning the contacts of the cartridge pins and inserting and reinserting the cartridge a few times should clear that right up. Another issue I had is the introduction FMV sequence in Resident Evil 2. This runs and plays fine on an original N64. On the Analogue 3D, I had various issues where the sound would desync, then the video would freeze, resulting in me having to reset the game. Now of course this could just be down to bad connections on my cartridge, but I did clean them, and the fact that it does run fine on my stock N64 does tell me that possibly it's a bigger issue here at play. Now I do want to be clear that the game does load fine 4 out of 5 times, but it's just that 1 out of 5 occasionally where the game does freeze up, and this is quite puzzling. But let's talk more about those per game configuration settings, and this is where the Analogue 3D really starts to shine. There are various display settings where adjustments can be made to disable things like anti-aliasing, which can sharpen the edges of many games. Depending on the game, this can be really beneficial. There's also settings to disable blur, and combining these two options can really pixelate the image, perhaps too much for most people's tastes. However, this isn't the end of the story. A second display menu option allows for a few CRT masks to be applied. These accurately attempt to recreate professional grade monitors, including the Sony BVM and PVM, as well as default CRT and scan lines. Of course, if you're not into scan lines, you can just disable them and just go clean. By enabling integer scaling or integer scale plus, it looks quite nice. Take for example this gameplay capture of Jet Force Gemini. I'm playing in the widescreen mode and enable the PVM mask with edges sharpened and AA disabled. The quality looks superb. Of course, if you're not into CRT masks, the default clean option will get the job done. But as mentioned, nothing here is enhanced at all. But this is a very clean image, scaling all the way up to a 4K resolution. These per game configuration settings are saved as well, so you don't have to go back and readjust them every single time. Now we have to talk about flash cartridges because many people have them and they're going to want to use their Everdrives on the Analogue 3D. And unfortunately, I have some bad news for you. Flash carts are very temperamental on the Analogue 3D, and this could be a deal breaker for some. I ended up testing 4 different devices: an original Everdrive 64 version 2.5, an Everdrive X5, a Kaiko Summercart 64, and a knockoff Everdrive Super 64 300 in one. The original Everdrive V2.5 did not even get detected when I plugged the cartridge in, and there was simply nothing I could do to make it work. The Everdrive X5 was detected, but launching it results in absolutely nothing. Nothing happens at all. The red 301 knockoff cartridge, which I'm guessing is just a cheap Everdrive variant, was not detected either. Fortunately, my Kaiko Summer Kart 64 was detected and does run mostly fine, but even with this, I still get the occasional crash. Now, when I asked Analogue about this, their response was, flash carts and unofficial third-party products can be a bit of a wildcard due to a crazy amount of models, revisions, firmware, foreign rip-offs of the originals. Developers of these products have historically always updated them in the past for maximum analog support after public release, but this is not in our hands. So if you see an unknown cartridge, it still may be playable, press A, but note our focus is on original games and accessories. Now, I did talk to some other reviewers and they too were having issues with flash carts. And my biggest issue with the Analogue 3D is if all you have is a flash cart and you want to use this device, then prepare for disappointment if your flash cart is not working. Both of these Everdrives, which are official ones I might add, simply did not work for me. I expect once the system launches, we will see a spreadsheet of known working flash carts, so maybe hold out for that. But right now, I can't with any confidence recommend any flash cart that will work with the Analogue 3D. We simply need more testing here, and for me, this is the biggest issue I have with the Analogue 3D right now, and this is why I keep reiterating that FPGA is indeed emulation. It's not software emulation, it's hardware emulation. It's a recreation of the original Nintendo 64, but it's not perfect. If it were truly 100%, then it would run everything that a stock Nintendo 64 does. But as we've seen here, it simply doesn't. Of course, Analogue is aware of this, and firmware updates can hopefully resolve this issue with flash carts. But as it stands, this is very disappointing, especially when you consider the huge cost of original Nintendo 64 cartridges and the prices they seem to go for these days. Now let's talk about one of the very best features of the Analogue 3D, the overclocking. This, in many ways, is the single most transformative feature found on the device, and one that I simply cannot live without. Many N64 games suffer in terms of frame rate, especially when the expansion pack is applied and resolutions are increased. In some instances, games can drop into the single digits in terms of frame rates. The overclocking option, which is found in the per game settings, can help with this, and much of the time it does so in a big way. Let's take a closer look. If you've ever played Castlevania Legacy of Darkness in the high-res mode, it's a bit of a joke, because the game turns into a slideshow. Performance here is not great at all. Even on the first level, once some enemies approach, it gets very choppy. Now let's enable overclocking and see the difference. It's quite incredible. It successfully smooths out performance and provides an experience simply that was not possible on the original N64 hardware. What about Perfect Dark 64? Another game that's notorious for slowdown and chug. Here on the first level of the game, you can notice it right away. Perfect Dark 64 is one of the very best games ever made, but its performance has always been a sore point. Many people just prefer to leave the game in low-res mode and play it that way, but even this approach isn't much better. It's an overall ambitious game that pushes the N64 to the absolute limit and goes beyond. Now let's take a look at the game running with the overclock settings enabled. It's a night and day difference. I can't stress enough how much I really appreciate this option. After the disappointment of Everdrive's not working on my device, this feature really turned things around. It's fantastic.
There's someone here! My gun!
Of course, overclocking isn't perfect. In some instances, especially if you enable the extreme option, crashing is possible. There are other examples of games that don't respond well to overclocking either. Quake 2 was another game that I tested. With the expansion pack, Texture quality is improved, but at the expense of performance. Unfortunately, enable overclocking only makes the game run too fast, but doesn't help with the frame rate at all. What this means is, games need to be tested individually in order to see if they see any benefit. Other games I tested included GoldenEye, which I'm happy to report runs so much better with overclocking enabled. Simply put, I've never seen it run anywhere near as smooth as this outside of emulation. Another game I tested was The World Is Not Enough. With the expansion pack enabled and the high-res mode, this game runs so much smoother. Imagine if Nintendo shipped us a more powerful N64 back in the day. It would have been amazing. There are many more games that suffer in performance on the N64, and it's going to be fun testing and seeing what the community can find. For me, overclocking is the best feature of the hardware, and I simply can't live without it. I do want to point out that it can be disabled and stock clock speeds can be set, but this is not the default. At least for this review unit, overclocking was set to the auto option, which I am assuming is running some moderate overclocking based on current load. Now, a few more areas of the Analogue 3D that I do want to cover include RomHacks and Homebrew. In my testing to date, I've seen no issues with either. I ran a WWF No Mercy RomHack cartridge and it runs just fine. I've also tested the Portal Homebrew from James Lambert off a Summercart 64 and this runs without issue. And I might add, it looks really great as you can toggle between the interlaced and non-interlaced modes. Scene demos like the Midwest Gaming Classic demo runs just fine, and I also tested a sample LibDragon program that I wrote for my split-screen N64 demo that I covered a few months ago. This runs fine without issue as well, and LibDragon support is definitely a welcome addition. With LibDragon Homebrew being compatible means that the community can use the Analogue 3D to test their code against. So in conclusion, I really like the Analogue 3D. The wait to get here was frustrating, but it's excellent at what it does. It's much more compatible than I thought it may have been. The biggest issue, and the one that makes it hard to recommend, is the flash cart support. It's simply just not good enough at this time. I can't stress enough how ridiculous in price Nintendo 64 carts are, and honestly, this is not going to help with that. I do wish Analogue can figure out their issues with this, as it is going to definitely disappoint some people. But aside from this, I do love the device, and it's going into my entertainment center and replacing my existing N64. Its display features are excellent, and the overclocking is the icing on the cake. Overall, it's a great system. It's certainly not perfect, but it's damn good. Now we wait and see what its main competitor, the Mod Retro M64, can do. The gauntlet has been thrown down, and I'm here for it. When that launches, I'll be sure to cover it here on the channel as well. But for now, we are going to leave it here for today's episode. I hope you did enjoy this review of the Analogue 3D. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you like this episode, please don't forget to leave me a like. And I will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.